So welcome. Let's get going. We have quite a bit of content to share with you guys today, and know that support will be there to follow up after today. So what we're going to be talking about is our continuous learning field guide and tools that will support this. And it's basically tools that can help support continuous learning. So this field guide was developed by our digital learning team to support quality online instruction, and what are some of those foundational tools and considerations as we have some good practices teaching online, but those same practices can be easily integrated when you're in a face-to-face environment as well, if that makes sense. Some of these things, the instructional strategies are very similar when you have kids in brick and mortar, and then you might need to tweak the way you do it, do something to engage kids when they're online. So that's what this guide goes through, and it's really designed to provide some professional learning for teachers. One of the elements as we go through designing, delivering, enhancing communication, collaboration, planning, feedback, and formative assessment, those are going to be and problem solving for learner success. Those are going to be some of our topics today, and we're going to talk about what tools can support those parts of our guide. We have developed a toolbox, and the bit.ly for our continuous learning field guide, or the link Beth will throw in the chat so you can access it, as well as the slide deck that we're going to go through today. So the tools are all here on this continuous learning toolbox, but we're going to, with resources. So if you need to learn more about a specific tool, if you click down here, you can jump to it, and there are links to video tutorials, screencasts, documents that one-pagers that we've created and curated to go through that content. Okay. So our outcomes, we want to become familiar with the tool guide to support the domain, and that's what that designing and delivering and formative assessment are. As we get going through this, learning key features and application, and when do you use a tool and why. Providing some considerations when you're evaluating tools, because I don't know about any of you, but I got a lot of emails saying, here's this, buy this, this is free for now, being thrown at me, and it's overwhelming. So just to let you know, we'll provide you some considerations and places to look when you're evaluating tools to use, and then also to build some awareness of some content that you can use within those tools. So before we get started and dig into the meat and potatoes, I just want to set some norms, because we are meeting virtually. So if you have any questions, Beth is going to be monitoring the chat, and she'll also be throwing some links into the chat as we go, so you can have the slide deck up on your machine if you want it, or if we have any resources or anything to share. Also, I will be sending out to you a follow-up email with some of these resources and contact information and stuff. So you'll have my contact information, as well as feel free to reach out to any of your district's digital learning consultant to help. Okay. I love seeing smiley faces. Thank you so much for having your cameras on and that feedback. It's nice. It gets intimidating when you have so many folks and they're all out in remote locations, so thanks. My name, if you don't know me, I'm Stacy Beamer. You got the emails from me. I'm the coordinator of digital learning and media, and our amazing digital learning team put together these resources to help share with you today. So the first thing, I kind of talked a little bit about the field guide and that toolkit. So those are two resources for you. Take a look at that field guide if you haven't attended. We have video tutorials to talk you through each section and some deep learning. It's really been designed to be, it could be like an independent study to go through that, or as a learning team, or as we will have it if a district wants to offer an in-district course, and I'll talk about that at the end. But this is just one component that will supplement it, these tools. So the first tip from Mr. Grant Wood, and Mr. Grant Wood shows up throughout our continuous learning field guide, is thinking about when you are evaluating tools, determine what you want the outcome to be. Some tools can be a lot of fun and they can have a lot of bells and whistles, but what do you want the students to be able to learn? And what information are you as a teacher wanting to collect as a result of using that tool? So keep that in the forefront. So when we are designing online instruction, this is what that domain is, the first one. And thinking about the big thing that it talks about is, where's your home base? What are you going to use? Where are you going to send kids to? And then are you going to use that home base and other tools to universally design for all students? So thinking about designing to the edges, because we know, I would love to see some thumbs up if I'm making an accurate statement here. Some kids have struggled learning in an online environment and being engaged. So thinking about how are we designing for that? Yep. So thinking about that from the get-go will help us. And some kids that thrive in brick and mortar might not thrive in an online environment. So that's what this module, this domain talks about. There's two ways of learning now. I shouldn't say just now, but we're talking about synchronous and asynchronous. So what are you going to use for asynchronous tools? So that's commonly referred to as a LMS, a learning management system. We've had a lot of folks talk about being consistent in your district with what is your LMS for this grade level team or your building team. So we're going to talk about some of those, as well as synchronous tools. So right now we're synchronous using a tool called Zoom. So we're not going to spend tons of time talking. So we're going to highlight and give you a high-level overview and some key features of this tool and how it could be used. The first one we're going to talk about is Seesaw. I'm going to hand it over to Mindy, who is our resident Seesaw ambassador.
Yes. So Seesaw is primarily, I think, used within an elementary classroom, although we do see schools that are using it at all levels. And what Seesaw originally started was as a student portfolio. So kind of important thing to remember with Seesaw, I think, is that it has built-in tools within it so students can create inside that tool. So it does have the ability to take pictures inside of it, video inside of it, take a picture and annotate on top of it. It has a whiteboard feature, lots of different ways for students to actually demonstrate their understanding and to allow them, I think it makes it a little bit more mobile around their home. So if they're at home and they're doing something that is kind of unplugged, what's great about Seesaw is they can still take a picture of that and share it with their teacher. They can share it with one another. And then parents also have the ability to see that through the parent app too. So as a parent who was working from home during this time, it was really nice for me to kind of check in with my kids, even digitally on my phone, maybe while I was in a Zoom meeting, like, oh, yep, I can see that they're working right now. So Seesaw is free. It works really well just with the free account. We have lots of schools right now that are looking to purchase Seesaw for schools, which has a little bit, it's a little bit more powerful, allows you to attach different standards to work, more teachers in each class, allows you to have some data as far as what students are submitting work and what students you need to maybe check in with again. And the last I heard from Seesaw, that was about $5 a student until you got into bigger numbers, bigger school districts. So there's also some built-in activities and a little bit of content. I always say that you should definitely take a look at that stuff before you push it out, but there's a really great Seesaw activity library too that could help get you started, and some lessons to help students get familiar with using it too.
Yeah. And one of the things as we're talking about these tools, as an AEA system, sometimes we will go through and look at what districts are using those tools. And Mindy said, sometimes our small districts, like I need over, 5,000 students to get the pricing. So as an AEA system, we are talking and looking at some of these tools to say, hey, we have 10 districts that want to get this. Can we negotiate some consortium pricing? So I would be interested in hearing what LMS is, and then we can go work on our district's behalf. And even if you've already purchased it, we've done that in the rear, so they've adjusted pricing. So just a heads up, I'm going to be asking for that information at the end. Google Classroom. Mrs. Kleinmeyer, talk to me about Google Classroom.
Hi, for those of you who are not familiar, I'm Lynn Kleinmeyer, another member of the digital learning team. So Google Classroom is another option for your asynchronous home base. It is a way to share content with your students. That content is teacher generated. But to share content with your students and actually have them interact with the content and with each other. So Google Classroom, I think some of the big pieces that I appreciate about it is if you are already operating within the Google ecosystem, you know, you're already having your kids interact with Google Docs and slides and their perhaps even their email, you know, the nice piece of this is that it works within that system and it seamlessly integrates. So everything from being able to add things to their drive, to their calendar so that they can be constantly aware of the things that they're being asked to do. That whole executive functioning and management piece is huge, as well as there's a new integration that if you are using Meet as your synchronous connection, there's actually an option to have that Meet link generated right within Google Classroom, which is another kind of advantage. So with Google Classroom, teachers are sharing out content either through an assignment or through announcements, materials. But there's also some other features where they can interact with the content and with each other. For example, there's a question feature where students can answer questions. So you get a little bit of that formative assessment piece built right into the platform. But then they can view each other's answers if that's how you have it set up as a teacher, which allows for some of the social interaction and that social aspect of the learning process. I think for me, the big thing that I think is an advantage of Google Classroom is the fact that you can actually create content for students and ask them, have them make a copy, which it will automatically put their name on the materials and give you access right from the get-go. So I think that's a huge, just once again, management workflow, executive functioning for you and the students. Google Classroom is a wonderful place for all of those pieces. So it's a wonderful option for a home base, once again, if you're already within the Google operating system.
So the next LMS, Google Classroom is not totally built as a learning management system yet. It's for assignments and communication, as Lynn talked about. Canvas is a product of Instructure, and this also has a free version. But then if you want integration within your student information system or some what?
If you want single sign-on, right?
Single,
so
yeah.
With the domain, if you have a school district that has purchased it, the student can sign in and have all of their classes there in a dashboard. If you use the free account, students have to sign out and sign in to different classes. So that's definitely one of the perks, I think, of purchasing Canvas. And kind of like Lynn was talking a little bit about home base, Canvas is the same type of thing, but probably a little bit more powerful. I always recommend that once teachers are starting to look at actually creating their own content and building pages for students to access, Google Classroom is really great to put in links already, but if you are looking to really curate your own stuff and make it very streamlined, that Canvas is maybe a direction that you want to go. Because it packages it all into these modules. So it's more like creating a digital textbook without a better way of kind of describing that. So there's also the ability to grade with speed graders, so you can flip through things very quickly, which is really nice. There is some classroom discussion possibilities. You can group students into smaller discussion groups, which is nice because sometimes when you put a whole class in one discussion, it's not very eventful for students, but it allows you to kind of group kids into smaller groups so they have more meaningful conversations. Anything else I should say about that, do you think?
I just want to say that Canvas does have Canvas Commons, where there is some modules that you can go put a course up and share it with a colleague, and they can pull it down and you can edit it. So it does have a nice bank of some online or some courses already built. That would be one thing that I would add. Okay, another LMS option is Schoology, which also is a freemium kind of product. Very similar, but the look is, Canvas is very modular. I think it's kind of like it can be designed, but I would say it's pretty text heavy. So I would use it primarily with older students. But Schoology has that Facebook feel of it with the stream. They also have a resource library, and you can do discussion groups. There is, if you pay for the features of it, then you get that, like the single sign-on, student information system integration, so they'll automatically know based on your SIS what classes that you need access to and those kind of things. So built-in grade or similar. On all of these slides too, we've linked to some resources, and then there's even more on the toolkit. So there's other LMSs out there, but those are the big ones that we have seen in our districts. So that's why we are focusing on those. Now we're going to switch from asynchronous to synchronous learning. Zoom, not going to talk a whole lot about it because you're all using it right now. And one of the things with Zoom though is the breakout rooms is a big plus, and that was something that set Zoom like apart from Google Meet, and Google Meet is the other. Google Meet just announced within the last week that they will be rolling out breakout rooms within Google Meet. So if you're using that Google ecosystem, one of the things I would say too right now, I don't know how many of you are using the free version of Zoom during this time, and it's 40 minutes. That free version has been, it's not going to be encrypted, so the data will not be as secure. So just an FYI, as you're having those conversations. So they're really wanting folks to purchase the education version of Zoom, so you get that encryption and longer meetings too, and the host controls. Oh, something else that people don't always know about with Zoom that I want to make sure I point out, and Google Meet will have this too, is the whiteboard and annotation. So if I wanted to, I could pull up some whiteboard tools and be writing all over this screen. And polling and your reactions, just fun ways to help engage kids. Okay, so moving right along, Google Meet should be next. Did I skip it? I did. So Google Meet is Google's version of video conferencing. They have shifted, like I said, the model, so you will be able to have full classes. The nice thing about this is the Google Classroom integration with meetings, and you don't need to worry about like the Zoom bombing. There is some best practices if Zoom using the password, the waiting room to let people in. So there's ways to avoid that. Like I said, coming soon, breakout rooms, backgrounds, whiteboard, raising your hands, Q&A, and quick polls. So Google is providing access to that tool, again, at no cost for G Suite for Education districts. Okay, so now we're going to open up a quick poll to find out what learning management system are you currently using? And if you're using a couple, you can check more than one. Classroom. Seesaw. Seesaw might be for the win. Can you all see my screen with the results coming in, or not? You can with that window. Okay. All right. This is good information for us. And if you're not using one, take a little. Take some time to look and explore those, and again, reach out to your digital learning consultant if you have more questions about selecting one, because having that home base is pretty essential and helpful when you are in the classroom, brick and mortar, or online. So Grant Wood's next tip, Beth Swans.
Hi, Beth Swans. I'm one of the digital learning consultants as well. And we spend a lot of time on our team talking about how we make decisions about tools and about how important it is to actually know what tools our teachers are already using, because all of these tools we're going to talk about today can be used in a multitude of ways. And just because you've used Google Docs before doesn't mean that it won't be the best tool for the new task. So it's really about knowing what the tasks are, but it's also about talking to the teachers and finding out what they're already comfortable with, what they're using, and where they can go from there. So I'm going to be talking to you about how we deliver online instruction. This is the second module in our the Continuous Learning Field Guide, and it really focuses on what are the parts of the lesson, how do you create the lesson online, how do you deliver the information. One of the things that you'll notice as we go through this is we really don't talk a whole lot about content. It's more about tools in the delivery process. There are a couple that are content focused, but most of them are not. And we do that very specifically. We'll talk some about content at the end, but most of these are more about how you just can deliver all different kinds of content. So the first one is Screencastify. And just to make sure that we all know, screencasts are when you record what's on your screen and share that with students. So Screencastify is a great tool to be able to record whatever is going on your screen. It's free for up to 5 minutes. Then there is a cost if you want to be able to do longer videos. One of the really nice things is it's asynchronous, so you as the teacher can create a screencast whenever. It captures everything that's on your desktop in real time. It works inside of Chrome, and then it can easily be saved to Google Drive. So if you're Google School, you can share that Drive folder with students. If you're using Google Classroom, if you're using any of those LMSs, you can share out from your Google Drive. There is a difference if students are creating the screencasts, and that for all of these tools, there's a difference in age requirements if you're creating or if you're consuming. So we really encourage teachers to help students move into the creating, but we also know that there's limitations for what is okay for students to be, what the tools are they're going to be using. So for all of these tools, if you want more information, reach out to your digital learning consultant. Also, just to mention, any of the little green words at the top link directly out to these tools. So Quicktime will take you right out to Quicktime. And so and each of those, if you are like our colleague Jonathan Wiley, who looks very carefully at the terms of, I just lost whatever it is, but it tells you like all the information about ages and all that sort of important.
Terms of service.
Terms of service. Thank you. So that will link out. It'll give you that information as well. The second tool we kind of highlight is Quicktime. This is a Mac-only tool, but Quicktime is something that's built into Macs that you can use to create videos. It can create a screencast. It can also create a video of me talking, so that the little FaceTime camera can also videotape me. So it's a way of putting pieces together that are already built into a Mac machine. Some districts, the teachers have Macs. You could be using those tools and create them that will be able to be shared with students in different ways. Specifically, there is a hack of how do you pull those two pieces together, be able to create a screencast and be able to videotape me, and that's in the little video. The other thing about our information pages, a lot of these tools we talked about in our FaceTime Live series that we were doing earlier. And we created one page, sort of the highlights, and those are linked on these information boxes for the tools that we already talked about. They're great, just succinct, focused, give you links to other details. So it's a dig deeper. Edpuzzle is probably one of the tools that I hear about from working with teachers using in the secondary classrooms especially often. This is a way to start with a video and add interactive quizzes. You can pause a video, you can add content where you would give them, just think about it. You can add a quiz where you're asking questions. You can do all sorts of different things. It has a dashboard where you can see how much time students are spending on the videos, and that's all part of the free version. If you want more than 20 videos, then there's a cost, but you can get a lot of leverage just with the free version. There's also all kinds of videos and lessons that are already created, so the gallery is available. You can also take those and tweak them and adapt them to make them fit your own needs. So there's a lot of possibilities in Edpuzzle. Actively Learn is one that we have several of our districts have been using. As Stacy said before, this is one where we had some consortium kind of supports for some districts come together and use Actively Learn. It is a free digital reading platform, but the paid version is for additional texts. The free version is mostly for texts that are in public domain. And if you want to add to that, then there's additional cost. So it's kind of a freemium. But basically, this gives you an option to look at online texts. Students can highlight, they can annotate, they can discuss. You can have discussions inside of there. Teachers can post questions. Students can post questions. So it's a way for all of these kinds of things to be used in an online environment. Desmos, specifically for math. Again, this is another great tool for lots and lots of teacher-created lessons. So there's challenges that are already built in. There is lots of lessons that give you, for one thing, they're a really great example of a digital online lesson. So the way the lessons are put together, there's I feel I can learn from that process even though I'm not teaching math, because of the way that they're chunking, the way that they're scaffolding, the way that they're building in a lot of prompts. But specifically, this is for math. Lots and lots and lots of help for math lessons.
And this is one that our math consultants would they endorse and they love it. So
yeah, and all
good
three
instructional strategies. It's not, it matches that.
Absolutely. And I see in the chat, there's people out there that are saying love Desmos. Yay! So yeah, we're happy for that. YouTube. So YouTube is I feel like a lot of teachers have a love-hate relationship with YouTube, as do districts. YouTube is an incredible, incredible tool. It also has some some limitations because you can get to all sorts of places inside of YouTube. So we use this a lot for providing content for students as a consumption tool. So as a consumption tool, you can use this with teacher-created videos. You can use to provide content. When students are creating, there's some additional sorts of a ladder, sort of, I would say. So Mindy has been working with as you see her on this little picture, Think, Make, Innovate Grantwood Art Challenge here. So she's going to talk a little bit about YouTube and what they are using with that.
Yes, I'm just going to fire hose it real quick. So starting in January, they changed the usability of it for our youngest students. So if you or your students are creating video, one of the things that happens when you upload it is that it asks you whether or not this video is created for children under 13. And for some of you, that's a yes, and for some of you, it's a no. If you are creating videos for your students that are under 13, you have to check that. And the problem is that you can't add it to a playlist. So a playlist allows you to kind of squish all of your videos together into a menu and a watch list. So some of the problem with that then is that you've created these videos, but you can't put them in a menu for your students. So that's one thing to be very aware of. That takes us to, yep, Stacy, go ahead and hit Wakelet there. So that takes us to another tool called Wakelet, which allows you then to create a playlist just by adding videos to this tool, and it makes a nice little playlist for you. I don't think I'm talking about Wakelet though. Who is talking about Wakelet?
Yeah, it's actually me, but that's okay.
Oh, okay. I'm
tag team.
Okay, and then you can talk about Wakelet. I just did you a nice little lead in there, Beth.
So one of the I think Wakelet is an amazing tool because it's all about curation, and it's about being able to put things together, links together that go together. So as Mindy said, it can be a playlist where you would provide a Wakelet to students, they would work through it in a process. This spring, I helped facilitate a class for blended learning on rigor and mastery. And one of the articles that people read was about curation for students. And this article was really saying one way to see if students understand content is for them to curate resources themselves. And I think that Wakelet could be an incredible tool to kind of take it to the next level and have secondary students especially creating their own curation of resources to share with each other. So Wakelet is very user-friendly. There are Wakelets on about any topic you can find. Collaboration is super easy. It's an amazing tool, and it just continues to build and build and build. It's like the new wave. I think it's the new Seesaw. So the Wakelet wave is rolling. And it comes to the end of our sort of how do you deliver content online.
And so all these great tool ideas. Thank you all for sharing in the chat. Please keep doing that. Like Stacy said, we'll add that to our list. But what we want you to, what Grant Wood and our team would like you to be aware of is thinking about cognitive load. So we all get really excited about new tools, new ways to engage students. But we want to just remind you that it's important if you're introducing a new tool that you're not introducing new content simultaneously, because then kids get really overwhelmed. So think about either introducing a new tool with review topics, or maybe just letting them explore without new content in there, but be aware of how much mental energy is going to go into learning that new tool, and wait until you introduce your content topics for kids. And so we're going to move into the next domain of the continuous learning field guide, and that's enhancing communication and collaboration. This domain is really focused on peer-to-peer communication collaboration. We think that's really important, and we recognize that that's really difficult when you're in a virtual environment. And I'll echo what one of my colleagues said before. I feel like it was Stacy, but not sure, that we think a lot of these tools and strategies would be great if you're in brick and mortar as well as if you're virtual, but we wanted to give some special attention here within the field guide. So here are some tools that would that can help you with doing that. So first up is Flipgrid. If you are using Flipgrid and you want to give a thumbs up, I think that would be great. It's one of our favorite tools to get kids talking and sharing with each other. This is a video response system where you can post a prompt for students and then they respond. It's recommended, or you can use it K-12, but Flipgrid recommends that you have a consent form for students under 13. It is asynchronous, so kids can do that on their own time, and it has great teacher support. So if you've not used this before, there's a library that you can get some ideas to get started. There's a Grid Pals community, kind of like old school Pen Pals, where you can connect your classroom with other classrooms. And so we think this is a great way to engage with kids, and Immersive Reader is built in to help support all learners. Next, some oldies but goodies that we just want to point out some features. So if you're a G Suite, we know you have Google Docs, but when we're thinking about getting kids collaborating and communicating with each other, remembering that they can share files with each other, they can be editing and adding to that document simultaneously. The comments that you see there, we really like. They can tag each other. So if I needed to work on a portion of a group project and Mindy couldn't start until I was done, I can add a plus sign in front of Mindy's email address to kind of let her know where I'm at or ask her a question for feedback. So it's a nice way for kids to be interacting virtually. They can suggest edits to each other. And we wanted to remind you about that chat feature, that kids can be in the document working simultaneously and chatting back and forth as they're doing that work. And all of our Google handbook is linked in there. So there's a section on Google Docs to help teachers get started, as with all of the G Suite tools, or many of them. Next up is slides. Very similar, that kids can be tagging each other in the user comments, but something that I know Beth and I kind of said we feel like is a hidden gem of slides is going to the grid view. So if you have students working and you go to the grid view, which you can see on the slide here, a screen capture of that, you can see in real time what kids are doing on each slide and where they're working together. And so I think especially for virtual, this is a game changer in kind of being able to get some formative information about where kids are at, which groups are on track and doing well, and which groups you might need to kind of step in and coach or scaffold their learning. Google Forms is a great tool for students to be collecting information and data for projects. They can look at those forms and be analyzing and organizing data. And again, there is a Google handbook that kind of helps you get started if you're not familiar with forms. Jamboard, which you might need to ask your Google admin to turn on, which came up in the chat a little bit earlier. So make sure that you ask. But Jamboard is lets kids write, draw, add text collaboratively. You can have up to 50 collaborators. It's Padlet-ish. I don't think it's as robust as Padlet. Personally, my team can jump in, but it's got that flavor where you can kind of add sticky notes. The screen captures you see, you can add a prompt, and then users can add emojis to say they like something, or they can draw on that board. But it's a nice way to kind of get kids brainstorming and interacting with each other online. Google Keep, one of Stacy's favorites, I think. So Google Keep is a great note-taking app. But what I really like about this feature when we're thinking about getting kids to communicate and collaborate is you can share those Google Keep notes with a team, and then you can be working collaboratively on a list of tasks. You can set reminders so that it can be time-based or location-based, but those time-based reminders can cue kids that they need to go back in. And I love Keep as a support for executive functioning for kids. And so you'll see some examples on the screen of that, but your kids that need support with organizing their time and their thinking, Google Keep's a great way to do that. Can also get shared with multiple teachers and families. So when I was in a building, we used this for check-in, check-out with PBIS for students, because all the teachers knew where the student was at, so did the family, so did the student. So it's a nice way to collaborate that way as well. Kialo, I think I said it right. Kialo is a new tool that I believe Lynn and Gina found when we were talking about online discussions. And so this encourages classroom discussion, and it scaffolds kids into thinking about, if they're researching to give a debate, how they can have a balanced discussion. And so it asks kids to think about a prompt, to choose a pro or con, and then to put in supporting information for their argument, and then they can see if this argument is balanced. They can rate each other's justification and rationale, and it allows teachers to create teams. And so we think it's a pretty great tool. It is a 13+ tool for terms of service, and in talking with Lynn, we kind of feel like it really is more appropriate for middle and high school students because of the level of rigor that's required to use this tool. And then another new tool that came along with Kialo, easier to say, is Parlay. So Parlay facilitates virtual Socratic seminar, if you're familiar with that. This is a little different than Kialo because it asks students to individually respond to a prompt first, and to be preparing to have an online discussion or group discussion collaboratively. They provide each other peer feedback before they go into the live discussion. The nice thing about Parlay is it provides teachers information about how involved students are in interacting with each other, and it integrates with Google Classroom. We do recommend this for high school students, again, because of the level of rigor, but there is a library to kind of help you get started if you are looking for help, and they have a really nice YouTube channel that kind of walks teachers through how to get started with setting this up for classroom discussion. And I think we're going to go back to Beth. Is that right, Beth?
That is right. We have another Grantwood tip, and this tip, just a reminder to really mix it up. I remember very clearly when I did a presentation on a formative assessment tool at a high school called Kahoot. The next week, I walked down the hall in the high school, and I heard Kahoot in almost every single room as I walked down the hallway. just a reminder that it's important for us to mix up these tools. It's easy for kids to get burned out. We as the teachers are thinking, well, I just did it with one class. But if every teacher did it with one class, that means kids could be getting the very same thing over and over and over. So just a gentle reminder for that. I think that is also a segue into this next section, which is feedback and formative assessment. When we think about feedback and formative assessment, did somebody want to say something? Oh, I thought I heard I was going to let somebody jump in. So as specifically as we think about feedback and formative assessment, this section of the continuous learning field guide really focused on how do we give this information to students? How do students use formative assessment in order to plan for their learning, and so that they can use this information, not just for teachers, but also for the students. So as I kind of mentioned some of these, none of these, my guess is these are probably not new tools for many of you, because formative assessment have been around. But think about using these with students in a different way. How can we give the information back to the students? So they're really driving this process. That was sort of our focus here. The first one we have on this list is Edpuzzle, and we've already talked about that. So I'm going to talk just a little bit about Padlet. And as Corey said, Jamboard is the Google kind of form of Padlet. And it hurt all of our hearts when Padlet moved from free to a paid version. You can still have a few Padlets for free. And yes, you can just keep reusing those and emptying them out. Padlet does offer an awful lot of options because you can put so many different formats onto a Padlet. The one that we have down here, it can be used as a way of gathering topics. This was for a 4Cs activity we did. So gathering, what do students already know? It can be used at the beginning of a learning. It can be used at the end of a learning to say, now how does this apply to what we've done? But just ways of getting students to let us know, us meaning the teachers, what they already know, and for a path to go forward. Kahoot, as I mentioned before, Kahoot is a fantastic tool. It is if you are not aware and not familiar with it, is a tool that's really game-based learning. It has some limitations, being that it is always multiple choice or true-false. So you ask a question, the students have on their devices, they have the 4 options, and then you can set it to be a delayed or immediate, that you can see what the results are. This works really, really well to see what group understanding is. So as a group, where are we at in this process? It's harder to dig into specific student data. It's just not set up for that. So if you want to know how your whole class is understanding, this is really a great tool for that. Or helping students see where they're at in the process. Am I understanding what everybody else is? Quizzes takes things a little bit farther. This one it's also a Kahoot-ish kind of a thing where you ask a question, they join a game, you ask a question, they can give you feedback. But it has a way to download specific student data. So it feeds into a spreadsheet, you can download that information so you or the student can know how they did in a process. So that allows it to work asynchronously a little bit better. It doesn't have to be an immediate feedback. There are lots of already made quizzes. You can find them on just about any topic you're looking for. Then those can be adapted and changed into what it is that you need them to be as a teacher. So both of these two are kind of the same idea. It just, quizzes is more, I would say, specific to students by student, and Kahoot is more whole group information. The next one is called GimKit. This is a little bit different. So GimKit is really like a game show sort of an idea. It asks questions just like Kahoot and Quizzes does, sort of a flashcard thing, but students earn points, you can provide money. It's more of a all-encompassing instead of just being a quiz. So this is something that you could set up and use through a whole unit, that they're kind of feeding that information in as you go through the whole idea. As someone just said, GimKit can get very intense. It's a more immersive, I would say, idea. There's lots of information online about it, helps you get started from the very beginning, takes you through step by step.
And I'm going to add with Gimkit, it was developed by some high school students. So they kind of knew like what they wanted to see, and it is really gamified. But one of the things that's I think nice about this is I can go back, and if I have an assignment as a student, I can keep doing it and try to get better and better and better and answer the questions. So it can be kind of like Kahoot, and quizzes can be kind of competitive. Gimkit you can set up to be intense and kind of competitive like that too, but you can also have like some personal goals for success too within Gimkit, because I can go back and raise more money in my account, and it's not real money, unfortunately. Okay.
If only, right?
Right.
The last one I have here is Poll Everywhere. This again is, this is more of just a quick information. You've done a lesson, you've talked about a concept. This is to take a poll of where students are. This, I think, is really helpful to see what students don't know and what they do know. So where are the incorrect answers here? It's not giving student by student, it's giving the whole group. So where some of the others were individual students and speed was really a part of the process, this is more just content, and your questions can be, you can look at where are the holes in the process. Other kind of interesting things, it'll create a, you can fill in answers. It's not just short answer. I mean, it is short answer. It's not multiple choice. And it will create word clouds. So if you're asking a question and you want information to see what comes up the most, it can generate a word cloud for you. So that's sort of a different spin on these formative assessment tools.
Okay, so I'm going to practice a strategy that Beth shared with us this week to see how it works. So I would like everyone to open up the chat, and I'm going to ask you a question. And then I'm going to give you a second. And then when I say waterfall, that's when you hit return or enter, and it's going to be like a waterfall, and all of the answers are going to go into the chat. Okay, so I'm going to give everybody a second to go find that chat and open it up. And don't hit return until I say waterfall. Magic word. I would like to know a tool that you are familiar with that you've had some success with students, and how did you use it? So tool that you've been successful with students, and how did you use it? So was it delivering the instruction? Was it through formative assessment? Was it a communication tool? Okay, so tool and how, and I'm gonna give you a minute or so to answer that. I need like Jeopardy music, and I'm not gonna hum it. And then when I say waterfalls, when you hit enter.
So I'm not going to take credit for this. This came to me from Vera.
Jesus.
I just lost her last name, from Highlander Institute. She's the one that shared this technique. So I'm going to give her a shout out.
Okay, so now I say waterfall, and I should just see a button. Oh, look at this. Doesn't it look like a waterfall with all the things coming in? And now we have a bunch of ideas, but what a great technique too for gauging a little formative assessment and getting feedback from kids as you're all online. Forms, quiz, Seesaw, deliver instructions, Google Docs. These are great ideas, you guys. Thank you. And thanks for entertaining me, because I've been wanting to try this, and this is the first opportunity. Okay. Now we're thinking Grant Wood's tip number 5, mix it up. We've kind of talked about that, the burnout. Problem solving for learner success. One of the underlying themes throughout our continuous learning field guide is thinking about learner variability in different learners. And some of those might be your ELL students, some of those might be special education students, some of those, you know, it might be like a student that has to work more independently because they're home, like going through content and some of the learning independently at home and not having a teacher there, or mom and dad might not be there to help. So thinking about how do we problem solve? So we've got a module set up for that, and we've got some call outs throughout the continuous learning field guide. But there's some tools that I think some of you might already be familiar with, and they might be good for a couple students that get access to them all the time. But you know what, if you have access, they might be good for other students as well that you might not realize until you go into an online environment. So one of the things as I start talking about problem solving for learner success too is thinking about accessibility tools, and I just called out the Google accessibility features here, is thinking about, you know, turning on closed captions. There's a lot of tools, accessibility features, speech to text for those kids that struggle with writing. And now if they're writing online, you can use that dictation tool in a Google Doc. So even within the iPad, you've got that microphone. So thinking about how that's going to help students and even help the parents at home ease a little bit of tension, because students can work a little bit more independently. So devices, consider the devices and tools that you're using that have accessibility features built in. So I'm going to talk about a couple of them. Thumbs up down below, you should have some reaction, so you can either applaud or thumbs up if you are familiar with Read and Write for Google. So this is very similar to Snap and Read, which we're going to talk about next. But this toolbar has a bunch of features to it. So it's got word prediction, it's got a picture dictionary, and it's got translation and highlighting, and you can build a vocabulary list. And then it can screen mask. Sometimes reading online is a little bit difficult to follow and track, so that screen masking can be used on a website. And these are tools that you could teach all kids how to use those tools. So thinking about that, if you have more questions about Read and Write, please feel free to let us know. There is a freemium version, so you can try it, and then you could also purchase. Some of the districts, as with Snap and Read, which I'm going to talk about next, sometimes if you purchase these and the supports that are built into Snap and Read and Read and Write might be great for special education students if you're matching a need there. But when you get to a price point, sometimes if you end up buying it for so many students, it's a fraction more to purchase it for everyone in the district. And how awesome would that be? Because some kids might actually have a 504 or just struggle with some comprehension and having not be on an IEP or a 504 plan, and just having something read aloud could be a great support. So Snap and Read is another Don Johnston product, which is equally as good as Read and Write. There is integration now with Chrome, so all of these can be used on multiple platforms. And I think Maggie might have joined our call, and she could speak more eloquently about these tools. But the read aloud feature here, one of the things that I really like too is sometimes if you get a PDF, it's hard to use a regular screen reader or a Chrome extension. So what this will do is it will let you a screenshot reader. So I could screenshot a portion of the PDF, and then it will read that portion to me. So that's a great feature that Snap and Read has as well. Word prediction, again, I just talked about that. Text leveling is also a feature of both of these. So if you need to simplify text to make it easier to read, level it down so kids are still reading the same content as their peers, but it will simplify that text for you. Just both of these tools are great, and like I said, they can come in handy for many students. So, okay, Immersive Reader. This is another kind of one of those built-in type tools from Microsoft that is talked about, and I believe there is a Facebook Live that our team has done, and we talked about Immersive Reader. And I have a link to some Immersive Reader resources on our field guide toolkit. This also goes through, and it's pretty amazing because it will take text and it will help with dyslexic readers, sometimes that following a flow of different colors, like what Beeline Reader, that extension does. So it's easier to track. It'll also pull out like parts of speech. So it will highlight in text, nouns, verbs. It is built in to, it'll break words up into syllables. So sometimes that helps chunking, helps students read. Mindy's still on. What else am I missing, Mindy, for changes the background color to help read? What else am I missing on Immersive Reader? It's built into Flipgrid. It's built into
Wakelet, which we mentioned earlier too.
Yeah.
And Wonderopolis. So if you're looking for content for kids too, that one is really nice. If you've never been to the Wonderopolis website, it's a great high interest reading for students K-8. I'm going to take a stab at saying 8th grade. And Wonderopolis is built into that. So kind of like Stacy had mentioned too, what I really think is great about this is it's really important for students to be able to converse with one another, with their peers. And so it makes it much more accessible to all levels of students. But the other thing I would say about, to piggyback a little bit off of the Wakelet thing, is when we talked about putting things into Wakelet, it will actually read websites that, or pages that you put into Wakelet itself. So it, that's kind of a nice way to make it more accessible to students. There is also an Immersive Reader Chrome extension that is not necessarily supported by Microsoft, because Immersive Reader is a Microsoft product, but it is open. I'm going to just say words. It's open source, right? Is that right? And so they put out the, code. This is where Corey comes in. They like put out the code or something. And so someone made this Chrome extension. So it will work in all kinds of places now. So if you have students with Chromebooks, have that added. You're going to love it. It's fantastic.
Okay, so those are kind of layers. Those tools like Immersive Reader goes on top of whatever website you're using. Same thing for Snap and Read and Write for Google. So to provide some accessibility, but also remember that there's accessibility built in to content and other websites. So just be looking for those and take advantage of those when you're in an online environment, again, to help kids who are struggling, but also to help students maybe work a little bit more independently as they're going through. So now I'm gonna, when we're looking and thinking about content, there's some places that you can go to get content, and we're gonna pass it over to Diana to talk about some of our AEA content that you have at your disposal. Oh, Diana's got to unmute. There we go.
There we go. Thank you. So we have online content that we have purchased. So teachers can go and they can Google and find different places to get information. And there are some great places out there. But sometimes we want to go to a place where we know there's not going to be ads, and we know that there's built-in accessibility features. Sometimes even your online textbooks cover that, but these will provide additional supplementary information. So first of all, our eBooks, we have an ebook platform, and these would be used for free choice reading, but they also could be used for book clubs, novel studies, and assignments in class, because we have trade books that are fiction, we have nonfiction, and one reason we're featuring this is because it's content we can actually purchase as well. So it's not just a program that comes to us with content. And then schools can also personalize their Mac and Via as well. So every book that I purchase goes on each school's Mac and Via, but then if they wanted maybe 50 copies of a title and they wanted it for their school, they could purchase that, and it would only be available in their school. It has a lot of accessibility features built in. So in the top right corner, you'll see that's an example of a read aloud feature, and it will highlight the text and highlight the word. It will highlight the whole sentence and then highlight the word as it's being read, and that can help build some fluency. It also has other features. You see the highlight there. It can change the color of that highlight. It can change the speed in which it's reading in case you have slower processors or you need faster reading. You also can change the voice that's in there. And there are also audiobooks. That's okay. There are also audiobooks, and they have read along for the younger reads as well. There you go. Then some other ebook platforms that could be free choice read, but also have specific content. We have for our elementary kids, BookFlix and Tumble Books, both, they have books. So BookFlix is what's featured at the top, and they have book pairs. So they have a fiction book paired with a nonfiction book. So maybe they have a book about a bear talking to the moon, but then they'll have a fiction or a nonfiction book about the phases of the moon. It offers read aloud for both. It plays a video for the fiction book and then takes that nonfiction text and breaks it down. They say that kids follow along with stories better, so grounding those in those fiction books to the nonfiction text helps scaffold that learning. It also provides slower and faster pace, and also has activities that are built in that go along with those pairs. Tumble Books has a lot of children's picture books put into video format. They also can have the text highlighted in red, but then it has older kids' ebooks and graphic novels and a lot of other resources that are available. When we get into some of the nonfiction, these are used oftentimes in context of core learning. We have Cyber Smarts, which goes over different digital citizenship skills. And so we have Cyber Smarts for kids, and then we have Cyber Smarts for teen. And then we have Freedom Flix, which covers different books. They're print books that are then turned into ebooks and have all the accessibility features built in, and they are on democracy, American history, and things like that. And then TrueFlix uses similar kinds of books and goes through, and those cover science and social studies. Those also can be embedded into your learning management systems, so you can put links to those into Google Classroom, into Canvas, all of that. As we're trying to mix things up and not always have just text to read or hear, we have video content that's also available. And so one tool we have is called AEA Digital Library, and that's where the AEAs go together and we will purchase some video content. For instance, we have some children's books that are in video format. We have documentaries. We have a lot of content for health. Because sometimes those topics aren't necessarily ones that you're going to find high quality out on the internet, and you want to make sure you have factual content. We have American History Video. That has videos as well as video clips or longer videos that can be broken into chunks on various historical topics. And Learn 360 has content in science, social studies, math, ELA, and health. All of them have different accessibility features, so the fact that they're video helps with people who maybe struggle with reading, but there's also closed captioning built in case a person is watching but they have a hearing issue. And they also provide the transcript for the video. So if you look at the left-hand side, you'll see that's just an example of a video, and we have the closed captioning playing, and over on the right is the transcript. That also helps if kids are taking notes and they need to cite textual evidence. How do you do that within a video? They can find the text and copy it and paste it in, as well as providing citations and other structures to help support the different kinds of learners. Then we can go to informational text, and we have a lot of different resources that will offer that, but these are some of the main ones that teachers can have students use if they're researching, but then also if they're looking to provide some informational text to supplement other content. And so we have Britannica School, which is an online encyclopedia. It offers articles as well as video and primary sources. EBSCO and Gale, they both search magazines, periodicals, primary sources, and they all have built-in features as well with the text-to-speech. And when they have videos, they have closed captioning. We have other resources too. That was just the tip of the iceberg. And if you want to see at the beginning of our school closures, the AEA librarians got together and we were hosting webinars on these different resources. And so the link to those are the second link down that says Iowa AEA online resource webinars. And all of our online resources for Grant Wood AEA is listed at the top and they're scrolling on the right. If you have any questions, I am glad to help. You can send me an email, and I also have a partner in crime, Kathleen Goslinga, and she is also more than willing to help.
Okay, so now I'm gonna do a little reveal, just so everybody knows. So kind of, I shouldn't say hot off the press, but I'm publicly telling people. We shared this spring with our teacher librarians. If you need to log in, a lot of this is paid content. So right now, due to COVID, a lot of our usernames and passwords have been removed, so kids and teachers could have gotten into it. But starting in the fall, we will be using, and we've worked with districts who already have ClassLink to provide a single sign-on for teachers and students. So they will go to ClassLink and use your school district email and username, and you will get in and it will automatically log you in to all of our online resources. So that will be ready to roll out in August for teachers and kids to make it a lot easier to get to the content.
That's a game changer.
Yeah, ease of use. We want to make it as easy as possible.
And when we're thinking of cognitive load, if these get used during school, and if something happens and they're outside of school, it's really nice to already have that foundation built in so that kids are already used to going to some of these. So that's just a side note.
Yeah, I just had a question come up in the chat. Everyone will have ClassLink. So the AEAs have purchased it for Grant Wood AEA will have it, and every district will also have access to it with our resources. Okay, and is it available to parents? So if parents need to get in, what we're asking them to do is to work with their student, and they could use a student login to access that. Okay, good questions, guys. All right, so thinking about, we've provided some kind of teacher-directed tools quite a bit, but you look at it and teachers are pretty creative on thinking about how can I use some of those tools, but then how can I have my students create? And Beth, I think you talked about the engagement with kids. So I would just, thinking about this Grant Wood tip, about what tools can you have your students use to be creators of content and show what they know. So maybe it's using Screencastify to have them do a screencast to share what they've learned, or there's ways in Seesaw. So I'm going to do another waterfall. So if everybody would open up the chat, because we're smarter together. And your question for this waterfall is, what tools, and we might not have mentioned them, so we're going to go off script a little bit. What tools and activities have you used successfully to have your students be creators to show what they know? And what did you do? I'm going to give you some time. I hear people typing. This is where I want unmute so I can know you're working, because awkward silence right now. Thanks for the smiles. I like that feedback.
While people are typing, Stacy and I were on a call with Highlander Institute, which is a group out of Rhode Island, and they have been working with us with blended and personalized learning. And they've been looking at national data, and across the country, engagement is a struggle, as well we know. And one of the things that they said over and over is creation is that one of the keys to that, to kind of get kids back into it, especially in this asynchronous online environment. So I don't know, it always makes you feel good when we are experiencing exactly what everybody else is experiencing, both good and bad.
Okay, waterfall, throw in the ideas. Google Slides, Seesaw. Oh yeah, the music lab, this one's fun too. Okay. Thank you all. And now, Beth, I'm going to let you talk about, hey, we have hit the tip of the iceberg with some tools, but these are just some core that we believe are good ones to use. What's going to happen if you find others? And there's others out there that just came across this list.
Yeah, so these are three resources that I personally use and we have used in a lot of different settings. I'm going to start with the one on the far right, Online Tools for Teaching and Learning. This is an amazing website created by UMass education students. And they categorize digital tools into several different categories. Each tool that is listed, they have how-tos, it's attached, tells you how it fits in with SAMR, it gives you links, helps, videos, like there's just so much information there. So if you're looking for specific new tools, that one on the far right is a great place to look. They have, one of the things in this scrolling is the new tools in 2020, which are not categorized in their list. So it's constantly being updated. Good use of education students learning, I think. UDL Technology Tech List in the middle. This is Universal Design for Learning. This is thinking about how we can use tools to meet the needs of all of our students and ways to kind of look at the tools we're using and see where the pluses and the minuses are in that process. And then the one on the left, the Common Sense Education. Common Sense Media is an amazing, amazing website. And one of the things that they offer is specifically for educators. And then if you click on where it says EdTech Reviews up to the top there, Stacy, EdTech Reviews, you can type in the name of a tool, any digital tool, and they have looked at the privacy features, they've looked at the cost, they've looked at how-tos, pros and cons. It's an excellent space to really start looking at if you're wanting some additional tools for your toolkit, or if somebody's mentioned something and you want more information about it, this is an excellent place to go and look into that. Common Sense Media has a lot of other great things, but this is one specific, I guess it's Common Sense Education, not media anymore, one specific for our digital tool world. We have a list of other tools. I don't know, I don't know who this slide is for. I'll be quiet.
This is me again, because I want to talk about, so some of these came up as you're thinking about like Adobe Spark, wanting students to be creators, because that's how they're going to be engaged. It's not just consuming, because it's boring for all of us. Like, you've been sitting here listening to us ramble for a while and talk to you about tools. Consuming is great, but creating is better. So these are other tools. So Pear Deck, Nearpod, WeVideo. WeVideo is a great video creation tool. So ThingLink, Google Sites, Book Creator, Adobe Spark, Scratch. And then one of them I do want to call out, that's one of our online resources, is Defined Learning. It used to be Defined STEM. And this provides some projects. Mindy, do you want to give a overview of Defined Learning on the spot?
Sure. So everybody has an account for Defined Learning that is a Grantwood AEA in our agency area teacher. We have purchased one of those accounts for each one of you. It is a database of projects that are cross-curricular that ask students to create something based on their learning, based on a specific audience. And it allows you or the students to choose their body of evidence that they want to share with you, or what they've created. The nice thing about it is it's not a place for students to go into. It's for teachers, strictly teachers, but they push out a lesson then that is either already created for them within this database, or you're able to edit it and change it and add resources or take things away to simplify. And then you can share it through a link through any of those home bases that we talked about earlier at the beginning of this presentation. So I think what's really neat about it to me is that in this time when we're really trying to follow some time recommendations as far as how long our students are working online, when we use lessons like this, it hits lots of different curricular areas without having to go just do math and just do reading and just do science. So it allows for some more powerful minutes away from our students. So definitely take a look at that. And if you have questions, there are lots of us that are able to help you. So you just have to let your digital learning consultant know, and we will answer any of those questions that you might have.
Thanks, Mindy. There is a form on the slide, and I'm going to have Beth throw it in the chat, but I'm also going to email it to you because I'd like some follow-up information from everyone. How do we access Define Learning? It's one of our online resources, so you can click on the online resources page and it will be there for you to log in, and your district login should get you there, your email. So the form that is in the chat, and this is also a button that's not obvious to me, but I can say that because I created it. So what we're trying to do is get some more information about, we try to cover some free and freemium tools. Pear Deck is another great freemium tool that we know there was some interest from our districts in. So we're looking at exploring some consortium pricing, and I mentioned that at the beginning. So if we have multiple districts interested in the same product, we can gather the interest and then try to negotiate some pricing with that vendor. Pear Deck is one of those who's agreed to do that with us. And so if you are interested in Pear Deck or Nearpod or WeVideo or any of those and want to learn more, let me know. And also if there's any, we can have you work with a vendor to look at those, and then, or our team can share what we know about the product too, if you're looking into purchasing some stuff. I don't know how many times like I said, I've been bombarded with vendors. Oh, try this, try this, try this. So there are some great tools out there, and we can always try to help you if you're considering one. Reach out to a district or someone that has used that tool and talk about success. And if you've gotten the ROI on the tool. So that survey will be asking some of those questions of you. And one of the things I just wanted to, I put this here. So final tip was my other tip before I moved it. One of the things I do want to talk about though to end with is digital citizenship. As we're starting to have kids work online, we need to make sure that we are modeling good digital citizenship and teaching them how to work online. And if you are in a face-to-face environment come fall and you're starting to use some of these tools, it's great to do some think alouds. Even I think when I was teaching middle school with my middle school kids, to tell them this is why I'm doing this. This is how we behave appropriately online. This is how we communicate online, and giving them some sentence structures for when they communicate online with their peers or with their teacher. That part of that is talked about in the continuous learning field guide. But if you are looking for some digital citizenship resources too, please let us know, because we can send those your way and align it really nicely with any of you who are using PBIS or you have any classroom or building or district expectations. It's easy to tie those digital citizenship expectations to that as well. So as we end our time together, I talked a lot about tools. We've all talked a lot about tools within the continuous learning field guide, but really the instruction is what needs to drive this teaching and learning. And then the tools are how we can help get there, get to our end destination. So we have some facilitation options for the continuous learning field guide. So if you're interested in going through this for credit, the continuous learning field guide with a learning team, I have some resources that I can go through with you. So just email me and we can have teams up to 10 to 12, or up to 10, 12 is pushing it, to do kind of like a book study, but go through it as a learning team, go through the continuous learning field guide and earn some credit. So that is one option. And then if you're also interested, we will have a course option. So if you in your district want to offer the continuous learning field guide as a course, so there's not as much collaboration and discussion when you do it as a course. But if you're interested, let me know that as well, because we can offer some district sections of that course, having someone in the district help us facilitate that, because we want to make sure it's customized to tools and resources that the district has and it aligns. But we've already built, we, meaning my amazing colleagues and friends, have built a template of the course. The content is built in Canvas and within Google Classroom, so you can deliver it within your district in either way. So if you're interested in learning teams or the course, in-district course, you just email me and we'll set up a time to talk. So all of this is all about continuous improvement. We're going to learn together, and we're going to just create plans, use the tools, and just keep improving how we're delivering instruction, whether it's brick and mortar or if it's online instruction. So keep that in mind. We're always trying to strive just to keep improving, and it falls into this process. If there's any questions, go ahead and put it in the chat. The digital learning team is available, so shoot your digital learning team member email, and they will get back to you. We're kind of hit or miss here in these summer months, so if they are unavailable, they've been super responsive, but if they are gone or on vacation or you're not hearing back, feel free just to reach out to me. You'll get an email probably this afternoon or tomorrow morning with a follow-up. So let me know if you have any questions too, and we'll help. I'm looking at the chat. Hopefully this has been helpful for you all and you've gotten some things to take away. And again, if you're interested in any of those products, we can set up some demos with vendors, and they can give you their pitches, and then we can go behind the curtain and give you our feedback too. But there's some really great tools out there. I mean, when you pay for some of the freemium or some of the features, you do get more features. So, and sometimes they're worth it. Okay, all right. Well, have a wonderful afternoon, and we will be in touch. You're welcome, everybody. Thanks, team.